Chapter 25, in which the Maybelle catches fish, and Princess Kitty decides to turn them gummy. As soon as Princess Kitty announced that she'll take Fred's place as captain of the Maybelle, it is obvious that some of the crew don't take it well. Later in the morning, she has Hector, Bugsy, and Isaac inspect what's become of the inventory at the trawl storage. After the ship sank and raised up, dissolved away was the flour, the sugar, and the salt. Useless was the tea, the rice, the coffee, and the spices. Destroyed were the eggs, the tomatoes, the bread, and the butter. The small keg of vinegar has been spilled and bled into the water. Only 5 of the 9 cans of milk survived. The oranges and any meat were spoiled. They were only left with the beans, the liquor, the lettuce, the potatoes, the apples, and the onions. In the midst of tossing the spoiled food overboard, Bugsy cried, "I feel like I'm degraded. Look at my hands!" Hector can see that Bugsy's hands were grimy. "This tells that I should have stayed in Morimo and have Fred hire someone else. I shouldn't be here at sea in the first place. I should be at home with my wife and child, relaxing in a recliner and listening to Guy Lombardo." Isaac can't help but laugh. "I guess life at sea ain't what it used to, doesn't it, Bugs?" "Do you want me to smash you in the face?" Bugsy spat. Isaac's smile faded. "Kitty won't like it, Bugs," he said. "She will not tolerate violence on board. After all, Fred relieved himself of duty and have her in his place, so he can have time to grieve for what he has done, for reaping what he has sowed. Don't forget that she's the only person who will get us home. We swore to depend on her." "Who cares about Kitty?" Bugsy hissed. "I will not be ordered around by a girl who isn't human, Isaac. And if she ever bossed me around further..." Then came a familiar, demanding voice. "You're what?" The 3 sailors turned, startled and frightened, as Princess Kitty stood beside them. "Get back to work," she said. "The sooner you get it done, the sooner you get it organized, then you'll have no concern about dying of starvation or thirst. You do want to survive, don't you?" Bugsy spat. "You're not the captain. Fred is the captain." "Fred was the captain," she corrected. "Doesn't matter to me. You're just a creature who isn't human. A freak!" She took a deep breath and said, "You'll be sorry for saying that. Now consider yourself warned. The next time you push me around again, my anger will be the least of your worries. You will not be prepared of what comes after." She left, but she can hear him shout, "Not as sorry as they're going to be if you boss me around! You and your 9 lives!" However, she kept going without turning back. Isaac hissed at Bugsy. "You idiot. I suggest you don't go near her or talk to her at all." Gif approached her and said, "Kitty, you think we'll be able to catch fish again if that crane is fixed?" "Always depend on me, Gif," she said. "Everything depends on what I can do." "How?" "The crane was run by an electric motor, which got ruined after the storm, as well as the electrics. It's like we're being thrown into the previous century." "Then the sailors will have to work hard together, catching fish the old-fashioned way. After all, a person only got 2 hands." "People nowadays depend on technology like that electric crane. We do live in modern times." "I'll see what I can do before the day is out. I will make sure of it. After all, you expect to get paid for fishing like everybody else. What will you be doing now, Gif? You don't have a piano to play anymore." He shook his head. "That changes nothing, Kitty. Though it does cost $500. I'll have to replace it with the money I'm making." He looks down to his blazer, all dirty and ruined from yesterday's storm. "I also need to buy a new blazer before the fall semester starts at Kerrigan, if you'll excuse me." "Where are you going?" she asked. "To ask Fred if there are some clothes I should wear," he said. "I don't have any other clothes with me. If you did change clothes, then so would I." "You have my consent. But later in the afternoon,
I need everyone on deck at once. We will catch fish again.
He heads inside Fred's cabin, where he finds him sitting on the side of the bed, drinking from a bottle. I would have been sober for the rest of the trip if there's no liquor on board, he said. I'm very sorry for the piano, though. Don't worry about it, Fred, Giff said. I also learned something on this expedition. What? Never wear a blazer meant only for Kerrigan on a fishing trip. Do you have any clothes for me that I can wear? Fred gets up and opens a drawer. Why not? He asked. You're a cabin boy, remember? Well, I once have a previous cabin boy like you, and I do happen to keep his clothes when he gave them to me last year. I hear he's now working in a small mining village somewhere in Wales. Dressed in his white shirt, orange vest, blue pants that are patched at the knee, a yellow cap, and brown-laced boots, Giff enters his cabin, finding Princess Kitty humming the notes on a music sheet for All Aboard for Dreamland on the side of his bed. He calls out to her. It would be nice if only I still had my Steinway. She turns to see him at the entrance. She was surprised to find him dressed in new clothes. How do I look? He asked.
I do expect you wearing something better than that blazer,
she said. She placed the music sheet next to her. They're from a previous cabin boy Fred has. I'm surprised they even fit on me.
Where's your blazer?
I left it in Fred's cabin, who threw it away when he finally reached the mainland. He walks over to his bed and sat next to her. I guess that means I really look like a cabin boy, he said. I mean, for a few days, the crew think I'm more of a university student. Anyway, I'm glad you agree. A creature like you. It really is better than wearing that blazer.
Just to think that wearing different clothes makes you different yourself,
she said.
Twice I wear different clothes. One for this expedition, and back when I was a younger girl.
Younger?
Of course, I was a bit reckless. I think that different clothes make you look like you're someone else. Probably it's because of the hair and the eyes alone, especially if they're pink as mine. Given that no person in the world has pink hair like me, that does make me stand out from the rest of the crew, doesn't it, Giff? Especially you.
I swear, Kitty, something has rubbed off of you and onto me.
Oh, really? Maybe life's really been too good for me.
Looking up at the crane with the huge net sagging, the crew began to think up any ideas on how to get it working again, until Princess Kitty shows up on deck. Any ideas of what you can do, Kitty? Fred asked.
Why else would I come here?
She asked.
To chase mice?
She pulls out her scepter from behind. Bugsy was hesitant about her for a while when he saw her with the scepter. If you have enough magic in that stick, he said, can't you just fix our boat?
I think I still got some water in my ears last night,
she said.
I'll have to look into it later.
So that's it. You're going to keep being a wiseacre. Give her a chance, Hector defended. She knows what she's doing. But what? Bugsy asked. The motor to the crane is messed up by the storm last night.
Oh, really?
She asked.
Why don't you start the motor now, Bugsy?
Didn't you hear what I say? It got ruined with water. Maybe you're not hearing properly with those cat ears of yours. If you know what's good, you behave yourself in her presence, Fred snapped. Why should I? Bugsy demanded. I don't think I'm going to trust that cat.
Fine,
she said. She turned to Fred.
Why don't you start the motor?
What if it doesn't work? He asked.
It will work.
But what if we end up catching stormfish? I don't want to risk another attack from them.
You won't catch them. They're long gone.
He flips the switch, and the crane moves to the right. The crew was stunned, but they cheer.
Whoever didn't think cats are unpredictable? She asked.
The net gets lowered into the water. Once it was submerged, the crew scattered on deck to repair some of the Maybelle to make it seaworthy again, while Fred invites her to his cabin. While he drinks some whiskey, she stated,
I do see that you have mourned enough.
I haven't mourned enough, Kitty. he said. "There's still those 17 that were lost, including poor Otis. And when they do get back, I'll pay respects to their wives and children."
"I'm sure you would do something that will console them."
"You know, I've been thinking."
"What?"
"Seeing that you have spoken to those who are unwise, I was hoping if you'd be a part of our crew. It would be nice with your own ship. You may have the capabilities of a sailor."
"A sailor?"
She shook her head.
"By the time I head back, I'm looking for more grown-ups who will be my friends."
"What about me?" he asked. "What about the rest of us? With you, we should stick together in every fishing trip. You will make a formidable sailor."
"I would I?"
she said.
"All the special training from my father back where I'm from. The mnemonics, the focusing of awareness, the control of my abilities, and the alteration of sensitivities, the study of languages, and the subtleties of the universe around me. All of it clicked into a new kind of understanding within me."
"Very formidable," he smiled. "Well, what is your answer?"
"I refuse. In 3 weeks, I'm going back to the Pratchett's, and once we've made a bond, it's impossible to make me break it, especially if you persuade me to join your crew or have my own ship at Moimo."
"You can make money for fishing with us. Without money, how are you going to live?"
"I always ask for no money, because as the Catgo Princess of KAWAII Wonderland, your money is no good for me." But Gift would need it for the piano he had lost already, as well as a new uniform.
Isaac came into the room. "Yes?" Fred asked. "The net is full," Isaac said. "It's now being hoisted up. I bet there's hundreds of them." "That'll be enough. Are the engines repaired?" "We got a long way to go. The cove's wet." "Would you like to go on deck, Kitty?" Fred asked.
"I would like that very much,"
she said. They went to the deck, gazing at a huge net that was full of tuna fish in front of them. The crew was anxious, but even with so many fish, the net was not torn. The crane hauls the net to the left, towards the fishing hold.
"That might be enough fish for you and your crew to feast until we head back,"
she remarked. "Yes, but we won't worry about hunger any longer," Fred replied with glee. "Tonight, while the engines are repaired, we celebrate. There's still music from the instruments they've bought."
"Well, since I haven't eaten in 6 days, I might as well join you."
"Oh, I was hoping you'd say that." "Fred, look up there!" Isaac suddenly shouted. "What?" Fred asked. "The fish!" Bugsy screamed. "They all turned red! I don't know how long, but it looks like it happened in 1 second. "I fear that we don't know whether we should eat them or not," Irving said. "Jeu de Dieu! It's food poisoning waiting to happen!" Seo shouted.
"Mochiron dekimasu!"
she calls out.
"I promise you that you have nothing to worry about, especially if the fish are red and gummy."
"Gummy?" Larry asked. "How can a fish be gummy? Fish can't be gummy. They're full of cartilage and meat and bones." "Do you have something to do with this?" Bugsy asked.
"Don't you hate it when someone is accused?" she asked.
"Just tell him, Kitty," Fred said.
"I have turned them gummy to make them taste better. Why don't you taste one?"
Using her scepter, she levitates one fish out of the net and onto Fred's hand. But he was hesitant. "Do I really have to?" he asked.
"Do you want everyone to starve?"
she asked.
"But if you absolutely hate it, at least you tried."
He poked at the fish first with his knife. It was a bit firm, but still soft enough for his knife to stick through. He sniffed. There was something a bit off about the smell, but nothing that denoted poisoning or salmonella. He licked the skin. It tasted like sugar, but was otherwise fine. There was only one more step. He moved the fish to his mouth and took a bite of the fin. He chewed on the piece for a while, switching it from one cheek to another as he tried to get a clear idea of how it tasted. As a fisherman, he could not pinpoint exactly how to describe it. There was a taste to it, but it was unlike anything he had consumed before. He didn't mind it. He kinda liked it. He loved it. He grinned as he took another bite.
"The stuff is wonderful. The texture, the flavor, everything. It's good to eat."
Using her scepter, Princess Kitty lowers the net onto the deck. Everyone takes a fish and eats them.
"He's right,"
Gift said.
"Delectable,"
Isaac said.
"I don't believe it,"
Bugsy said.
"I haven't tasted anything like it," Ekdor said. "But how are we going to tell the merchants at Morimo Harbor?"
Irving asked.
"No one even hasn't heard of gummy fish before."
I'm sure the other merchants would agree.
She smiled.
And once they tasted them, they'll be begging for more.
She raised her scepter up in the air. The scepter glows and becomes a silver trumpet. She blows a merry tune and sings.
As a princess, I've eaten many dishes in my time, like truffle hearts and squimberry tarts when served up in their prime. Oh yes, how nice to take my advice. Eating sweets is not a crime, though you might get a stomachache that wasn't so sublime.
She blows a merry tune and continues.
I've eaten chocolate eclairs and donuts without a grudge, and apple fritters while having the jitters, and cakes so full of fudge, and chocolate rounds to gain some pounds till your body wouldn't budge, because your belly would get big and fat and even pudge.
She blows a merry tune and continues.
I often eat some macaroons, their taste is so divine, and when I scream for buttercream, it's easy to incline. A royal treat for someone sweet, with nothing to refine. And if you ever refuse, then you might be asinine.
She blows a merry tune and continues.
I'm mad for snickerdoodles when I'm really in a slump, and lolly-tops of lollipops can really make me jump. Of course a dish of licorice makes a smile out of a grump, especially if I'm lazy while I'm sitting on my rump.
She blows a merry tune and continues.
I crave for some wagashi and melon pen for tea, and if you try some lemon pie, it shall fill you with glee. I love the smell of caramel when it's part of a recipe. I never have to mention that it's practically free.
She blows a merry tune and continues. But this time, she spoke very hard and very slow.
For dinner on every birthday, right before your two eyes, you'll get a wisp of apple crisps and some snozzberry pies, and please your belly with catnip jelly in a jar of impossible size. It's so scrum-diddly-umptious, it'll catch you by surprise.
She blows a merry tune and continues.
And now's the time, I'm glad to say, to feast this tasty dish. It's never rare beyond compare, with skin that you can squish, and there's no doubt you go without, as long as you should wish, for one small mite, one tiny bite of yummy gummy fish.
She blows a merry tune and finishes with a bow. Several of the crew clapped and cheered. You mean that you actually crave foods that are full on sugar? Bugsy asked.
Those are the only foods I could eat in my life,
she said.
Just be clear that I'm not like other people, or other cats.
I don't think it's good for you, Kitty,
Cyril calls out.
There's always a risk of diabetes, weight gain, heart disease. Just 5 pounds of sugar is enough to kill you.
He's right, Kitty, Fred said. Should we eat regular fish instead of this? If we catch more fish, would you not turn them gummy next time?
You have my consent,
she said.
You have your catch, and I have mine. With food like these, we shall make it through the day, and through the next, and through the next. I want you to believe.
We believe, all right, Bugsy said. Believe that we now had nothing to drink except cheap liquor. I mean, you do only drink sarsaparilla like it's milk from a mother's breast, Isaac said. She raised her scepter up in the air. The scepter glows and becomes a huge cauldron of silver. It hovers for a moment before it was submerged. The cauldron went back up and is placed onto the deck. It is now full of water from the sea, but Bugsy was not impressed. We can't drink seawater!
It'll make us sick and dehydrate,
Larry said.
Then we'll be more thirsty,
Irving said. But Princess Kitty will not tolerate complainers. Right in front of her feet, several chalices of glass materialize. She picks one up and scoops the water from the cauldron. She gives it to Bugsy.
You will drink this water,
she said. Do you want us to get sick? He demanded.
You think that's what I want? I have no intention on making you sick. You will not be sick, and you will not be dehydrated. I want you to believe.
He throws the chalice away.
If it means making us sick, then we will never believe in you!
But she didn't attack him back. She turned away, thus making him angry, and decides to attack her himself. But he's stopped by Fred.
Stop it!
He whispered. But she turned to face Bugsy.
Are you sure you want to fight me?
She asked.
I don't think you'll ever hurt me for the rest of the trip when I'm done with you.
Oh, is that a threat?
He snapped.
Because when I'm through, you'll be crawling below on your hands and knees and lusting for food and water like a dog wanted to be put out of his misery. Do you think I was fooling? Do you even?
Then he stopped. Then his eyes begin to widen. That's because she glares dangerously at him, especially when her pink eyes have a slight tint of red. He tried to speak again, but no words come out of him. He tried to move away, but his muscles won't let him. He tried to close his eyes, but they were unable to close. He could just do nothing but stare into her face. Fred can see that Bugsy began shaking and sweating. Distressed, Fred asked, "What are you doing, Kitty?" However, she didn't turn to face him. She has her eyes boring down at Bugsy. Then, Fred can see Bugsy spasm and groan. It didn't take long for the crew to be concerned about what she's doing to him. Fred shouted at her.
What are you doing?
"Kitty!" Giff yelled.
Didn't you hear Fred? Kitty, stop it! Isaac cried. I think you're hurting him!
Bugsy is now in excruciating pain and began panicking as he continues to have his gaze at that cat-like face and her eyes. He tried to scream because of the pain, but couldn't. As far as he knew, only groans can come out of his mouth, but he had to scream. He felt like his skin was on fire. His lungs were filled by dry, hot air, making breathing difficult. The searing pain intensifying as if someone was cutting him with countless of blades. His heart was racing, and he could feel something warm and wet down his extremities. He must have lost control of his bladder. Why can't it just end already?
Kitty!
Fred screamed.
Stop it! Can't you see? Do something! Make her stop!
But the crew were unable to stop her. When they get nearer, it's impossible for them to breathe, as if a barrier prevents them from touching her. Bugsy's heart was feeling as if it would burst any second, and he was unable to breathe. For a moment, he panicked as he realized he was suffocating, but even the thought couldn't keep his eyes away from hers. It was swept away instantly by a new wave of agony, yet he is unable to scream. At the same time, he tried desperately, but it came out in meaningless gurgles as saliva begins pouring out from his mouth. He could feel his clear thoughts in a rush of fear and pain.
Stop it!
Fred screamed. Then he can see Bugsy drop to the deck like a lifeless marionette, struggling to breathe and rubbing his throat. Her eyes no longer have a slight tint of red, but she continues to stare down at him. Larry and Cyril hoisted Bugsy to his feet, but his head drooped down. They could have sworn they heard a small whimper.
Get him inside,
she instructed.
Make sure you give him his drink.
Immediately, although feared of what she might do if anyone gets on her bad side, they immediately take Bugsy away towards Cyril's office.
What did you do, Kitty? Fred growled. You could have killed him!
He had it coming,
she stated.
He just had to push me to my limits.
But that doesn't give you an excuse to hurt him! But she still kept her tone.
I had to.
What do you mean you had to? Giff asked.
It's really one of the abilities I do with my eyes, as Princess of KAWAII Wonderland, she said.
Then may I ask, what kind of princess are you learning something like that? Fred demanded. He almost died when you stared at him this way like a cockatrice.
All I ever did was teach him and anyone not to push me to my limits, to infuriate me, she said. If they do, my stare is what awaits them.
What do you call that? Gif asked.
It's called the Batsu stare, she said. Another ability I can do with my eyes is kokoro. It ensnares the brain and manipulates the mind, making someone clear out of any thought. Kokoro and Batsu were completely different from one another.
Oh, I don't think people are going to mess with you again, Fred said.
That's exactly right,
she stated.
But don't forget, you all depend on me to get you back to Moimo Harbor.
Both depend on and fear, Fred murmured. How can we last that long, Kitty? Gif asked.
By drinking this water,
she said. I'll do it, Fred said, and she gives another chalice to him. He takes a sip, and it didn't taste salty. How does it taste? Isaac asked. It's sweet, Fred said. Hector used his hands to scoop up the water and drinks it. He immediately spits it out. ¿Qué estás tratando de sacar? He screamed.
Maybe you shouldn't use your hands then,
she said.
You will use only these chalices. Then the water will be sweet to you, like the surface of the gummy fish.
Fred gives Hector the chalice and tastes the sweet water. Soon, everyone gets a chalice and drink the sweet water from the cauldron.
In the name of the kingdom, I've sent you all as much as you need,
she said.
No more and no less. I want you to believe. That's all you have to do. If you do that, then I will take care of you for the rest of the voyage home. And you won't ever go hungry or thirsty again. I want you to believe.
What about Bugsy? Fred said. Is he going to die after you stare him down?
He will live, she stated. However, he will never be the same again.
Later, Fred went to visit Bugsy inside Cyril's office. He found Bugsy laying in bed next to Cyril, but his hair has turned white from the shock following his encounter with the Batsu stare. Fred sneered when he saw a glass chalice in the basin, away from the victim he has seen. How is he doing? Fred asked Cyril nervously. Cyril shook his head sadly. Not good. I don't think he'll recover for the rest of the expedition. Not for what happened. So far, he refused to drink something. Kitty wants him to drink the water from the sea. When I drink it from a glass chalice, it became sweet. Bugsy's face changed, and he held up a trembling hand. I wish to see or hear no more of this Princess Kitty, he said in a loud, unsteady voice. I am quite done with that girl after what she did. Fred glared at him. And you won't, because you just had to make her angry. You just had to doubt her. Seeing her angry is bad, but it's her stare that is worse. If you want to be with your family, you must always depend on her. I'd be much happier if I don't want to hear it, Bugsy whispered. Please, Capitaine, Cyril said. Leave. Fred ordered. You will get him to drink this water from the chalice. If it does make you abandon this accursed topic of Kitty, I will drink it. Bugsy trembled. I want her to forgive me, though. She doesn't want your forgiveness. Clearly she'll know you're sorry after she gave you that stare. Clearly I have been through enough. In the meantime, if you can sit and talk with me of other things, for God's sake stay and do so. Otherwise, go. That night, when the Maybelle catches more fish and hauls them in a separate hold, Fred thinks that was enough and decides to go back to Moimo Harbor. But there was a problem. The engines are still inoperable, and there's no electricity. So they've decided, in order to survive, to eat some of the fish they've caught, even drinking the seawater from the chalices. This lasted until Wednesday, when Princess Kitty decides to do something about getting back home. But to make matters worse, only for the crew, the fog rolled in when it gets dark. Out on deck, Princess Kitty and Gif were watching the fog getting nearer. "Do you think we'll live through the night?" he asked. "I don't think I would ever trust fog this dense. Something suspecting, I might say."
"I know it concerns you, Gif,"
she said.
"However, you should be thinking about other people you know in the city, like the others on board. What will your parents say if you're actually alive?"
"Then it'll be a miracle. It really is when you've gone fishing with us, when you do great things to us. It is like you've said earlier, it was awfully lucky for you that we met."
"That depends if we have learned something from this. The way I see it, I think we at least were having a gay time eating gummy fish and drink sweet water. I'm sure they'll remember it for a long time. I'm certain."
"But what about the fog? Aren't you supposed to be afraid?"
"Why should I be afraid? If something unusual happens, I think it's best not to be afraid. As long as you believe, you've nothing to worry about."
"It's obvious what sort of a creature you really are."
"And what will become of you when you head back to Moimo? Will I ever see you again? Will you be going to London or to the other side of the world?"
It's best not to think of the future when we're living in the present. However, I can come visit you until I head back to school, if I ask permission first.
"Oh, good. Let's hope your family said yes, because we are friends, or at least good companions."
"Of course we are, Kitty. You did have interest in my music." Just then, there came a sudden thought from her.
"But we're not in love, are we?"
Gif said absolutely nothing. Probably, he does have feelings for her, even though she isn't human and has cat ears. Spending so much time with her in the first few days of the expedition does arouse a lot of interest within him. And right now, he had an opportunity to show it.
"Well?"
she asked. Without saying anything, he slowly leaned in, pressed his lips against hers, and kissed her. She fought the urge to cooperate for about a second before she wrapped her arms around him. He can feel her tail gracefully brushing down his leg and hear her low purrs while he admires her stateliness. Her lips finally part as if overcome for a moment by a sense of rapture. "I really hope it answers your question, Kitty," he said. "Perhaps you're even familiar with love, especially if I had feelings for you."
"Oh, Gif,"
she said, her voice now soft.
"that really depends if feelings toward me would ever last."
"I hope it does forever, Kitty. I love you. I love you, not as a friend, but a very unique creature who's misunderstood at first. Anyway, I should be heading back."
"You go ahead. Got anything else to do on this boat?"
"Fred wants me to take over his lookout in a few hours. What about you?"
"I'll just be spending time with a man who was once a captain."
Up in the wheelhouse, Fred stood and watched, trying to see through the thick white mist. He doesn't like it. Not at all. It was claustrophobic enough on the ship, in the corridors, or down in the hold. The fog made it just as bad on deck. "Is there something you could do to get us out of here?" he asked Princess Kitty when she enters the wheelhouse.
"You are asking me too many questions, enough for me to even remember the slightest,"
she said.
"I'm guessing gummy fish wasn't enough to savor your taste buds."
"Of course, you have to chastise my seamen on how to survive without any more fatalities from cataclysm. You already gave Bugsy white hair from your stare, for instance. You even landed him in the specialist's office."
"I am a dedicated princess from my kingdom, and the pleasures I reserve for myself are somewhat limited. Later on, your worries of ever getting back will no longer be of any concern to me.
So you've brought some help for us?
Oh, Fred,
She sighed reluctantly.
you're such a child who's afraid of the dark. You think that just because I have magic, every worry shall be easily remedied. Guess when you get back, you'll have to think of something realistic from now on. Of course, if you choose to ignore this plea, then I won't have to tell you twice.
He asked. You tell me that you use magic if you feel like it? She shrugged.
Let us hope we see something that can help us through.
With that, she leaves the wheelhouse. Oh, how right she is going to be.